Miss Monroe, it's time!
If there was ever a film that was built on the structure of style over substance, Andrew Dominik's Blonde would be that film. Based on the fictional novel of the same name, and you heard that right, fictional novel, Blonde is a very maximalist take on Marilyn Monroe's fictional life. And as you probably know already, the film is just as controversial, if not more, than its novella. Starring Ana De Armas as Norma Jeane herself, she's one of the very few bright spots the film has to offer. She does her very best in portraying the pop culture icon, albeit through a very questionable accent, where hints of Anna's own accent are sprinkled throughout her performance. Nevertheless, she champions the role with extremely precise effort, physically, mentally, and emotionally, making this her strongest performance yet. Supporting her is a solid cast with Adrian Brody as Arthur Miller and Bobby Cannavale as Joe DiMaggio, where both give good performances. Another, or more likely the last strong aspect of the film, is its visuals. I'd be lying if I said it didn't look top-notch, and the way it's edited visually looks pristine, even if sometimes the film goes overboard in the movement of the camera or in the editing department. Bearing Babylon, Empire of Light, and The Fablemans, all of which I haven't seen yet, Blonde has the best visuals of the year so far. But other than that, I felt like the rest of the film was either average, like its sound design, or just terrible. First off, this film is way too long for what the end product is. A 2-hour and 40-minute runtime is astonishingly laughable for a film of this magnitude. Mainly because the story isn't really a story, but also this film would have been better served as maybe 2 hours or 2:15 runtime. Piggybacking off that, the story is terrible. Not even going to talk about the idea of further damaging Marilyn's already tragic life, but the story just feels like a string of Marilyn's lowest of lows. There's no narrative. It feels stitched together rather than a carefully crafted film. I couldn't get into a steady flow because it just feels like I'm jumping years in between years. And by the halfway point of the film, I just checked out of where we were in the timeline. I was that confused. Honestly, if you see this film as moments or scenes from an actual biopic, the watching experience actually gets a bit better, mainly because of Anna's performance and because of the gorgeous cinematography. These scenes in isolation are really, really good, but together contribute to a damning lesson on how you need to pace a story and legitimately write a story. Because the film presented is already very, very dark and tragic, and I'm not even talking about the legitimacy of the actual life of Marilyn herself, but the way it's written and portrayed. Usually, in films where it has a tragic or downward story, you get at the very least some optimism or positives when telling it. Blonde maybe has one, and that was during the Arthur Miller segment. It felt like it was way too overwhelming and sad, which may very well be their intention, but it was too unbalanced and executed poorly. You can make stories tragic and fulfilling, only if you're putting enough effort to do so. And at the end of the day, story is king. And here, the story just isn't up to par. It tried to balance the very fine line on being a commentary on abuse and exploitation, which it did feel at times, but it still does tumble a number of times to being exploitative itself. I'm feeling a 6.4 out of 10. It's a fine film overall, it has its moments at times, just don't go in expecting a biopic.